Welcome to this week's episode of The Retirement Spy, where we share experiences in a collaborative platform for those entering phase two of life and are ready to embrace this chapter with gusto and an attitude of carpe diem. You can find out more about us at www.theretirementspy.com or contact us via email through that website. Today, I'm really excited that I've got my friend Reese Bricken of Adventures of the Heart joining us. Reese has been leading this program that I found about 13 years ago to help men deal with the things that men deal with in their crises of their life to reclaim their manhood. Reese, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about your background and how you started Adventures of the Heart.
Yeah, Duncan, good to be here. Glad to be able to join this podcast. I actually became a Christian when I was in high school, went to school at Auburn, got involved in a college ministry, got married my last year of college, and then Sandy and I was in the Navy for 4 years, and we were on the North Shore of Oahu. We actually lived right on the beach, and it was a great time. It was like a 4-year extended honeymoon. Learned to surf, had a catamaran, had a Hobie Cat, went out through the waves. It was a great experience. But after that, went to seminary, and then was a pastor for 20 years. Went to Dallas Seminary, and then was a pastor for 20 years. 6 years in Southern California, 4 years in 4 or 5 years in Tampa, then started a church in Atlanta. And then things didn't go quite like we thought they would go. And I was getting, if I wasn't clinically depressed, I was pretty close to it. I was not enjoying ministry. And Sandy and I's marriage was in a tough place, probably because I was not in a good place myself. So somebody gave me a manuscript copy of Wild at Heart. Wasn't even published yet. It was a
This is
manuscript
John
copy.
John Eldredge's book. Yeah.
Yeah, Wild at Heart by John Eldredge. And I read that and I never heard anything like it. And so I went on a retreat. This guy that gave it to me said, why don't you go on this retreat with these guys it was out in California, in Etna, California. So I went to this retreat. It really was a good treatise about the heart. And I actually heard from God for the first time in a very, very long time on a very personal level. So I came back and resigned from being a pastor and started this ministry about 25 years ago. In the first retreat, we had 17 guys, and we saw more life change in those guys than I'd seen in the previous 10 years of being a pastor.
You know, what a great message. Question. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. What I love about what you're doing, and I really want to jump in because what you're doing is so important. In Eldredge's book, Wild at Heart, he kind of touches on three things that are critical for men, and it's a large part of what you're doing. One, in the area is the battle to fight. Men need a battle to fight, a woman or a beauty to pursue, and then an adventure to seek. I'll touch on these areas a little bit as it relates to your thoughts on the book, and in particular, let's start with the battle to fight. What does that mean for a man to have a battle to fight?
See, every man is created by God with a warrior's heart, but most men don't really understand that, and they haven't been given permission to embrace that warrior's heart, because that is part and parcel of who they are. And part of the battle, every man has a battle to fight, and most men think it's their job. It's not their job. It's way bigger than their job. See, every man has a place in God's larger story of redemption. And part of the mystery and the beauty and the adventure of life is to discover what that place is and then live that out, so that you actually live out the very thing you were created by God to be and to do. And doing comes out of being. But the battle to fight is that there really is a battle, or there's a war. This is a love story in the context of a war, God pursuing our hearts in the context of a battle. But most men don't realize there really is a battle. There's a battle for his integrity, for his heart, for his wife, for his kids. And is he aware of that? And so what we do is we teach people, one, there is a battle, and here's how you begin to fight that battle.
And I can't wait to talk about the retreats and what they mean to me and what's happened. Concept two in Eldredge's book is really men need a woman or a beauty to pursue. Expand on that a little bit.
Well, let's talk about the next one, which is an adventure to live. Then we'll get to the beauty. An
There you
adventure
go.
to live. See, most men, I think there's been some misconceptions. Most men, when they hear adventure, they think, well, man, it's adrenaline rush. That is jumping off bridges or going fast or driving a car fast or something like that. The adventure to live, that's part of it. But the adventure to live that many men miss is your life can be an adventure. I mean, what can be better than hearing from God every day? So you begin to realize I've got a part to play in the larger story. And the adventure is learning to walk with God. In that adventure, taking risks so you see God come through in ways that you couldn't pull off in your own strength and your own savvy and your own wits. And so the whole adventure, we are created for adventure. I mean, if you ask men what kind of movies they like, 100% of the movies would be adventure movies. They love
Absolutely.
adventure. They
Yeah.
love to go hunting, they love to go fishing, they love to go surfing, they love to go fast, they like motorcycles. All those things are the adventure. And this starts right when a boy is born. I mean, a little boy, when he gets a bicycle, after a while, he wants to jump it, do tricks on it, all those things. And that's part of the adventure. But see, many men, Duncan, what happens, they miss the adventure because as they get older, they don't think that they can participate in the adventure. But
It
the
seems
adventure,
juvenile, doesn't it? It seems juvenile. You're mature now. You have a job, you have a family. The adventures, it kind of falls to the wayside, doesn't it?
yeah, I think for many it does, but the adventure is not like I said about adrenaline. Adventure is learning to walk with God and taking risks. See, it's a risk for a man to really pursue his wife and learn how to love her well. It's a risk to go after his own brokenness and figure out, why do I overreact the way that I do and what is causing that? And how can I invite Jesus in to begin to heal me and free me from this? It's an adventure to pursue the hearts of your kids and swim against the stream in our culture. So
Gosh, yeah.
you actually father your kids in a way where they know who they are. That's what the adventure is taking risk in the kingdom of God and watching Jesus come through. And the amazing thing is, the more you take those risks, the more you see Jesus come through, and you get to do that more and more.
What I love about what you're doing is, I guess I hit and found you. It wasn't midlife crisis, but men go through so many changes in life. Some people can call it a midlife crisis. I think for our audience at the Retirement Spy, men in particular are hitting phase two, trying to figure out what to do next, and their heart gets lost. And so the things that we're talking about here is refining your heart, which is such an important part of every stage of life for a man, whether you're young, midlife crisis, or going into retirement, as we're talking about today.
Yeah, I'd like to take a little more time on that question. I think we are going to do that about retirement. But then the third thing, the third core desire, the way God's designed a man, He has a beauty to pursue, a beauty to love. And I think we get confused on that one as well. That what in every man, he's, right, like in Genesis, when God created man, He says it's not good for man to be alone. So He created Eve. And it's a helpmeet suitable, and they're opposite. And God wants them to learn to live together. And what's interesting, Duncan, I mean, when God just chose an illustration to illustrate His love for those that He loves, He chose marriage. And marriage between a man and a woman displays the glory of God when marriage is lived to its fullest. And so what happens, I think, is we don't understand. The reason I think men find marriage so difficult is it all comes out of who you are. And first you have to receive God's love, own that, so you can learn to pursue your wife and give away that love to her. What for women, the way they want to be loved is different than the way men want to be loved. And most of us as men, we don't understand that. The core desire of God has created us to pursue a beauty. It can be incredible, but it obviously has challenges. I love John Eldridge's definition of marriage when he says marriage is God's divine conspiracy for your transformation,
I love that.
which
Divine
means
conspiracy.
yeah, which mean I mean we get married for a lot of different reasons. If we're willing to cooperate, what we find is that marriage works great because we get to see who we really are. And I'll never forget when I looked in the mirror when Sandy and I were really having a difficult time in our marriage, and I looked in the mirror and I said, "The problem is not her; it's what's coming. That's the person in the mirror that's the problem. It is my own brokenness that I was inflicting on my wife."
I love it. Before I got married 30 years ago to my beautiful bride, I had a great piece of advice from a friend of mine he's an all-star quarterback in college, good looking guy. And long story short, he said, Duncan, a tip for you before you get married. If I'd realized the problem with my first two marriages was me, I never would have gotten divorced from my first wife. So to your
Yeah.
point, the brokenness, you have to look inward, and that takes a lot of humility to do that and a lot of help from God to do that.
Yeah, it does. And so, but the beauty to pursue So you have to ask the question, I think, Duncan, realistically, okay, what is the effect of my life? What is it like to live with me? And so if you want a glaring example, just look at your wife and ask the question, is she growing? Is she alive? Is she feminine? Is she embracing who God says she is? Well, you get to be a key player in that as a man. And I'll never forget that the guy that started Promise Keepers was Coach McClartney, and I think he was a pretty driven guy. But one of the things he said, which always stuck with me, he said, "The rest of my life, what I'm going to do is make up for lost time where I didn't pursue my wife."
Oof.
And so you don't want to wait until you get retired to begin to pursue your wife. You want to pursue them. And see, a woman, her core desires are different than a man. A woman wants to be pursued, noticed. She wants to be invited up into an adventure. She doesn't want to be the adventure, and she wants to unveil her beauty. See, those are different core desires in a man, and you can see it in the way women want to be pursued. And as men, we tend to put that on the back burner rather than continue to pursue our wife and romance them.
It's hard to do, and it's too easy to say you just need to keep dating your wife. That doesn't say it all, and I think there's so much more to it. Pursuit versus dating your wife are two different things. One's more proactive, one's very involved, sets goals, everything else like that, and one is just like, "Oh, yeah, let's go out on Saturday night, and I'll check that box."
You're right. It's not about, again, it goes back to who you are. See, everything flows out of the heart, and either you're the real deal and this is authentic, and your wife will know it. I mean, your wife knows if she's living with someone that's true and authentic and is actually changing and being transformed by Jesus, or she knows of someone where it's the kingdom of me, myself, and I.
Yes.
And that's very difficult to live with. That's why it's a very good question to ask yourself is what is the effect of living with me?
So a big part, I think, of going into phase 2, as we call it, the retirement spy, we hate the word retirement, is taking a look at your relationship, your marriage, or if you're with somebody, hopefully you're married. What can you do to strengthen that? Because I'm telling you from friends of mine that I've looked at that are 10, 15 years ahead of me, going through the golden years can be the best time of your life. But if you don't have a partner to do it with that you're committed to, that you love, that you're pursuing, it's not a fun place. It's not a fun place at all. And I say that mortality increases greatly when you don't have somebody to share that experience with, meaning your wife, your spouse.
The way it's supposed to work is that if you walk with God for 10, 15, 20, 30 years, it ought to be demonstrated, that is, it ought to show so that a man theoretically would become more loving, more gracious, more kind, more truthful, more authentic. He would get delivered from himself, and the person that would benefit the most from that would be his wife. Well, but the problem, though, Duncan, that's where we fumble. We fumble because we don't give attention as men to our heart, and as a result, we don't have much to give away. And so many, I'm afraid, that I don't think men mean to do this, but I think if you listen to what the culture says, it's very easy for a man to pour his life into his career,
Yes.
and then when he gets to the end, he looks around and says, "What do I have?"
Yes.
And you don't have much. I mean, I remember there was a guy that he was a friend of mine, and when I was in seminary, and I remember he told me about his father that was a big high executive in a giant paper company, and I think he was vice president or president. He was a big, big cheese guy, and he told me that when his dad retired, or I think he died suddenly, so he went to the office to collect his things a month or so later. And he said, "Well, I'm here to collect my dad's stuff." And I said, "Oh, yeah, it's down at the end of the hall in a box." They had already got a new guy in his office, and everything that he had was in a box at the end of the hall. And I thought to myself, wow, that's a pretty interesting commentary on life. You invest your whole life in a career, and it's over like this, and then what? I don't think retirement actually is a biblical concept.
No, not at all. Interesting, just as an aside, tip for the audience is you can't wait till the career is over so that you can start working on your marriage. I know everybody's busy. It's hard to make time for the kids, time for the family, time for your golf game, time for all the things you want. To your point, this stuff needs to be worked on forever. And you just can't wake up one day in retirement and go, hey, I've got all this time. I run into more friends who the wives already have an agenda. They usually have hit retirement or a different pace in life when the kids go. And when you finally catch up in retirement with your wife's, I've got mahjong on Thursday. I've got tennis on Tuesday. Cowboy, I don't have time for you. And by the way, I've moved on. And that's a sad place to be.
It's very sad, and that goes back to those core desires, and see, again, it all comes back to the heart. What I would encourage if your audience, people, if they're considering retirement, moving to retirement, is the most important thing you have is your heart. And how are you caring for it? I'm part of learning to hear. Are you learning to hear from God, learning to hear from Jesus about who you are so you live differently and you live in the kingdom of God following Jesus rather than the kingdom of me?
This is a perfect segue, Reese. Since Eldridge's book, I think, came out in 2001, Wild at Heart, you've been leading retreats with your own group, Adventures of the Heart. Tell me, or give the audience a little preview about how men recapture their heart, whether they're young men, midlife crisis, or into retirement, which I imagine is a growing sector. Tell me about your retreats and what you're doing to help men recapture their hearts.
Well, we do a retreat, usually starts on a Thursday and ends on a Sunday. And what we do is, in essence, we help a man recover his heart. We help him recover his masculine heart, understand what it means to be a man. That this is what God intended by creating you as a man. God only created two, male, female, masculinity and femininity. And we've gotten that so confused today. And most men don't understand what it means to be masculine. So we help a man recover his masculine heart. We help him learn how to walk with and hear from God. And what we teach him is that there is a larger story. You've got a critical role to play, and you're the only one that can play it. In fact, you're the William Wallace in your Braveheart world. Only you can play that part. And the question is not whether you have a part. The question is, will you play it? When life is over and done and we go to be with Jesus, he's going to ask, how did you play the part that I had for you? And it's so worth thinking about that. So what we do is we help a man learn to hear from God. Most men don't realize that they can actually hear from God. And he'll tell them who they are, what he thinks of them, how he sees them, and that fundamentally changes everything. And in essence, what we do is we create an environment where men can experience God, hear from him, and that's where the transformation comes. They're going to forget what I say. They're going to forget the illustrations, but if they hear from God, they won't ever forget that. And we help a man understand where he's broken. That is where all of us have been, we actually don't mean to, but we tend to live from core lies. That is, we live from a place where we believe certain things about ourselves that start when we're very, very young. And we live out of that, and then we wonder, why is our life not going so well? Well, the reason it's not going so well is you're not living true to who God made you to be. So we help men begin the process of figuring that out. And we also help a man learn how to pursue his wife. And we teach a man how to fight. That is, how to fight the spiritual battle that he finds himself in, because we're all in it. Okay, I remember I took a guy out to lunch one time after one of our expeditions, and he said, I liked everything on the expedition, but I didn't like that stuff about the battle. He said, I don't want to do that. I don't want to fight. I just want a nice little quiet life. And I said, well, you may want that, but you don't have a choice. This is what you've been born into. So so the well, the question is will you fight? It's not whether you're in the battle, it's will you choose to fight.
I think every man instinctively has a battle to fight within them, but it's different from everybody. We look at examples like William Wallace of Braveheart. You're looking at Patton, you're looking at the people. When you think a battle to fight, you're thinking of things that they're different battles to fight. It doesn't mean you're out with a gun doing something crazy.
Oh, no, no. What
That's
we're
right.
talking about is a spiritual battle that not only that every day you wake up, you have an enemy. This is what the scriptures teach. You got an enemy. Jesus says the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. And every day he wants to steal, kill, and destroy your life. And what we do is we sing zippity doo dah and go to the beach with having a picnic on D-Day, and then we wonder why we're getting blasted and blown apart. The reason is because most men, I'm sad to say this because I was a pastor for 20 years. I never taught this. I didn't understand this. But most men do not understand how to fight so that they recover their heart and they learn how to fight the spiritual warfare that comes against them.
Some of this is simplistic in that anybody who's had a little bit of counseling will understand the dysfunctions that can be brought from our families of origin. And it's the messages in men's head that we're not good enough or that we're second place. And we're always fighting for something we don't quite know what it is. At your retreat, we really do have a great chance to hear from the heart, but you also have some fun things that I think accentuate masculinity in those adventures. I'm thinking in particular, one retreat I had, I don't know if you still do this, we had paintball wars
Yep.
where literally everybody grabs a paintball gun and we have an obstacle course. And I can't remember anything so adrenaline than getting on a paintball course, shooting at a bunch of guys and fighting. But you have several exercises like that that kind of bring you back to your what I call your core roots of a man.
Yeah, we do adventure because, you can the brain and the heart can only absorb what the seat can endure, the rear end. So if a man sits too long, he won't hear very much. And usually in the afternoons of what we do, we do skeet shooting or other types of some type of adventure where there's a little risk involved and men can participate to whatever level they feel that they'd like to.
It's amazing. And I tell you, what a great program and just the right time to do. A question, and this is I'm going to throw this out at you, and it's a zinger of a question. What does it take to be a man today?
Well, the what it takes to be a man today, I would answer that question. What is a man? A man, one, he knows God as a friend, knows who he is, and he's fully engaged in life. He's not passive, and he understands his role in the kingdom. That's what a man is. So out of that warrior's heart, he lives and he engages life and he both knows God intimately as a friend and he also knows who he is. See, David, if you remember the story, David, when he defeated the Goliath, was probably 17 years old. And all those warriors in the army of Israel were terrified of fighting Goliath. David was the only one who said, I'll do it because he knew God and he knew who he was. And he had demonstrated that in being a shepherd and defeating and fighting those lions and other animals. It all goes back to what we were saying earlier, Duncan. I mean, it either is or it's not. I mean, it's either real or it's not. And so it's not retirement that's the issue, it's your life that's the issue. And how are you living life and how are you caring for your heart in such a way that you can are becoming who God intended you to be?
So interesting. What you're saying is that, and this is the perfect way to ask this question. Our audience are men that are headed into retirement or battling with the decision to retire. What you're doing with your program of Adventures at the Heart is the same for a 30-year-old or a 40-year-old battling midlife crisis as a man is battling retirement. Is there anything that's unique about the battle of a man's heart as he goes into retirement that may be different from a midlife crisis or a younger man?
The only thing unique, I would say, is the issues are the same for a 20-year-old, a 19-year-old, or an 80-year-old. It's masculinity, and it's about the heart. The only thing I would say that's unique about a man who's facing retirement is he's about to step into a giant hole, and he doesn't know it. And the giant hole is what you mentioned earlier, is for so many years, his identity for most men has been derived from their work and their job. And suddenly when they don't have that, the question is, who am I? Have I got, what have I got to offer? And see, your job is not big enough to answer that. Only God can answer that. Like you were saying earlier with your wives, they step into retirement and the wife looks at him and says, well, who are you? And that question can only be answered when a man has recovered his heart and learns how to pursue his wife. And he has to earn that by the quality of how he lives. I mean, the wife knows bullshit. I mean, she just does. And you can't fake this stuff. And so if it's authentic, she's either drawn to who you are as a man or she tends to put the wall up and keep you at a distance.
I'll give an ad for your group and what you're doing. I've been at your retreats from 19-year-old men to 70-year-old men, and the battle is the same, as you'd say, from 19 to 70. What's unique about your retreat and what I'm so excited about is there's really a way to help change men, regardless how old you are, to help find that heart to relive life with a passion, whether you're 19 or you're headed into retirement. And that's so good about what you're doing, Reese.
Well, thanks. It's really about a man recovering his heart and figure out who he is, and that changes everything. It
So to
totally changes everything.
Two things of note, book that we've referenced, John Eldredge, Wild at Heart, great book to read and to pick up. Tell them and our audience how they can get in touch with you with Adventures to the Heart to learn more about your seminars and about how reclaiming their hearts through you.
Well, just go to our website. It's www.adventuresoftheheart.org. Has information there about our upcoming events. We have about 75 to 80 guys on an expedition. We call them expeditions.
As I say, anywhere from 19 years old up to all ages are involved, and it's
Yep, we do request that they be out of high school. So So they need to be out of high school. And then we've had them 82. Got men that are 82, and it's been transformative. I mean, we had one guy go, who's 82. He recovered his heart. He went back and apologized to each of his kids about just how he was as a dad, and it totally led to some real transformation in his family.
You know, it's just so amazing. And I can't thank you enough. Reese Bricken with Adventures of the Heart, thank you so much for all that you do. Stay tuned for our next episode of The Retirement Spy, and you can find us at theretirementspy.com at the link listed below. Reese, thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Duncan.